was never superstitious. In fact, I always thought horror stories were just that, stories. Until the day I went to a cultural fair and my life changed forever. When I found out there would be this fair in my city, I was immediately interested in going, as I love such things, especially crafts. Let's say there weren't many places to hang out in my city. I wanted to go alone. I wasn't in the mood for my friends at that time. When I arrived, I was enchanted by the architecture of the fair. The wooden and thatched stalls were perfect, and colorful flags helped create a lively atmosphere on that night, which felt like a warm-up for the festivities of the next month. I stopped at a stall and bought a wooden keychain, with my name carved on the spot by the vendor. After that, I had a delicious hot dog at the nearby booth and decided to continue my stroll. When I received my change, I put it in the back pocket of my pants and turned to leave. Accidentally, I bumped into a woman. None of us fell, but she ended up dropping her bag full of papers on the ground. Swiftly, I crouched down and helped her pick up the papers one by one, tossing them back into the bag. When finished, the middle-aged woman looked at me with an expressionless gaze. I noticed she had deep dark circles, her hair was unkempt, definitely hadn't seen a comb in weeks, and her clothes were quite tattered. But by no means was this woman homeless or anything like that. She was more like a very neglectful woman. I said, "I'm sorry, my friend. Didn't see you coming." "It's okay, thank you for helping me get back on track," she said, continuing to stare at me without blinking. I felt a bit uncomfortable, and it got even worse when she suddenly hugged me. Her move was so quick that I didn't have time to dodge. I couldn't break free from her strong hug because that would require a lot of strength and it would seem very rude on my part. I saw no other option but to hug her back. Then things took a turn for the worse. During the hug, she leaned into my ear and whispered, "I apologize, my friend." She let go of me as suddenly as she grabbed me and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I was paralyzed for a few seconds until I returned to my senses and processed everything that had happened. That's when I realized something was wrong. I began to feel a strange presence around me, something I couldn't explain. The fair, which was so full of color and life, suddenly turned gray and lifeless. That's when I saw the creature for the first time, peering at me from behind a rack of shirts for sale at one of the stalls in front of me. The being had no face, as if its eyes, mouth, and nose had been removed and only cavities remained exposed. It was wearing white clothes with torn black pants and was barefoot, but its arms were tied around its torso as if it were wearing a straitjacket and couldn't move them. No, actually, that was definitely a straitjacket. It was a few meters away. No one else seemed to notice it, but I could see it clearly. I looked down to try to get the monster out of my line of sight, and I noticed that one of the woman's papers had been left behind, near my feet. I crouched down and picked it up. When I unfolded it, I saw that it was completely scribbled with black pencil, but some parts were intentionally not scribbled, forming the phrase, "I'm watching you." I crumpled and threw the paper away. I tried to move away, but no matter how far I went, the creature always appeared somewhere around me, staring at me. It was horrible to see this creature moving slowly, shaking its head, while a voice hissed like a snake in my ear, "I'm watching you." I couldn't understand what it meant, but it was the only thing the creature said, despite visibly not having a mouth. I tried to leave the area, but the creature followed me wherever I went. When I got home, I quickly locked myself in and went up to my room. I looked out the window and realized that the being was standing there, looking at me from across the street under a well-lit lamppost. How was it possible that only I could see that? I started to get more and more scared, and I didn't know what to do. The creature had never entered the house, but I didn't know how long this would continue. I couldn't sleep at night, afraid to close my eyes and open them to find the creature standing in front of me. I tried talking to other people about it, but no one seemed to believe me. I thought about calling the police, but what good would it do? Finally, after several weeks of research and sleepless nights, I found an old book that talked about a similar creature. The book explained that the curse was passed from person to person through a returned hug, and the only way to get rid of it was to find someone to pass it on to. It was a curse created by ancient witches from the time of Mesopotamia, long forgotten and discredited, but that never ceased to exist. That's when I understood what had happened. A flash passed through my mind the first time I saw the creature. That woman had passed the curse to me that day through the hug, and then she fled, cursed. I tried to look for her in the same area of the cultural fair, but never got a hot lead on her. I found some clues, but they were always confusing and led to nothing. I didn't know whom to pass the curse to, only that I had to do it. I was completely terrified by it, couldn't bear the creature watching me. I decided I needed to pass it to someone who deserved it. The person I chose to pass the curse to was someone I hated. Someone who had hurt me deeply in the past and I never forgave. If I told the truth, she would never let me hug her, so I had to find a way to make her catch the curse unknowingly. I invited her for a date, a dinner, to seal our peace. I patiently waited until we had a moment of closeness, hugged her tightly, and didn't let go until she hugged me back. It was at that moment that I passed the curse to her. Without her knowing, I could feel it. I saw the creature and realized it was no longer directed at me. I understood that now it was that young girl who was cursed. And for a moment the being disappeared from my sight, and there I knew it was my chance to escape, and without thinking twice, I got rid of it. But after some time I started feeling very guilty for what I had done. I knew that the person I hated didn't deserve this, and that I had done something very wrong. I tried to talk to her to tell the truth, but she had disappeared without a trace. I didn't know what to do. I felt guilty for passing the curse to someone who didn't deserve it, and now she had disappeared without me being able to explain the truth. I tried to find a way to undo what I had done, but it was already too late. I was haunted by remorse for years, always wondering what had happened to the person I hated. I never knew what happened to her, and it tormented me until the end of my life. I never forgave myself for what I had done, and that guilt was something I carried with me until the end of my days. But the funniest thing of all is that my remorse is not the only thing still haunting me after all this time. No. It's that during the time I write to you, pouring out my feelings, trying to cleanse my sins, sitting in my rocking chair in the psychiatric asylum I was abandoned in, the creature still stares at me standing next to a bush, whispering to me, "I'm watching you." Yes, indeed, I'm still watching you. It almost seems like a joke. It must be one, as the creature is laughing at me. Yes, surely it's laughing, and it doesn't even have a mouth. Is it my remorse that still keeps you here?